Yes, that's right. It's time once again. Major Astro head Thrice Majestus here to give you the goods. Today, we're talking about Pluto in the 12th house and why I feel that our anime character of the day that fits this placement is Ichigo Kurosaki, the main antagonist. Hey, well, with this placement, sometimes it can be quite antagonistic, but he's the main protagonist of the Shonen Jump manga and anime called Bleach. So let's begin. Now, you're probably wondering what in the blue hell is the 12th house, and why would it matter that Pluto is in here? Well, it's a few things. Let's start with Pluto. So Pluto in the realm of astrology has to deal with a lot of people say taboo things, death, sex, transformation, rebirth. But it also has to deal with, and I feel like this one is probably overlooked a lot, our personal power. A lot of people are not a fan of Pluto. Some say that it is another malefic planet, and in astrology terms, it's pretty much a planet that makes you bust your ass to get some goods in life. Until you put in said work or bust your ass, it's not really gonna it's not gonna treat you well, at least in the time being. And with Pluto in particular, this is indicative of the wherever it lands, sign and or house, place where we have had our power either suppressed or taken away from us. And it is through working with Pluto that we, get it back. As far as the death and transformation aspect of it goes, it is more so that, so I'm of the opinion that when Pluto is somewhere in that area, in that realm, it's going to overhaul, meaning completely destroy whatever the hell was previously there that no longer served us, and rebirth, revitalize, rejuvenate that area as its top tier, top form. It's very alchemical. And so this being applied within the realm of the 12th house, which is pretty much it's super crazy to think about because the 12th house is the collective unconscious. It is our inner spirit world, and our connection to the spirit world in general. Some say it's pretty much like doorway to the Akashic records. Some say it is the Akashic records. It's a whole bunch of stuff. It's all intangible. Houses 1 through 11, all physical, all tangible. House 12, absolutely not. It's completely intangible, a completely different dimension. So now you're saying, what in the blue hell does that have to do with Ichigo Kurosaki? Well, with Ichigo Kurosaki, we've got a whole bunch of different things. As the main always say antagonist. Why? When will I learn? When will I learn? Protagonist. I'm protagonist. As the main protagonist of Bleach, Ichigo is a teenager, and he finds one day that he's able to see ghosts. Later on, he's learning that there's different kinds of ghosts, some called hollows, and the hollows are kind of like malicious or malefic, like entities. And he comes across somebody who fights them, a girl named Rukia, introduces him to the world of soul reapers, or shinigami for those people of culture. And so, long story short, he becomes one. Ends up fighting them, ends up fighting the Hollows, yada yada. They go on a whole bunch of missions and things of that nature. But then later on, we find that Ichigo actually has an inner hollow himself. And this becomes a plot point throughout the story. Whenever Ichigo is attempting to access and or reach higher levels of power, he's often confronted with this inner hollow. And the inner hollow plays no games. one of the main things about Bleach, actually, I want to say the main thing about Bleach is gaining your true power by understanding yourself, which is why it's my favorite series of all time. Personally, I feel that every time that Ichigo, and this I called this from the jump. I said this. Nobody's gonna really believe me, but it's fine. That well, I should probably give a little bit more of a spoiler warning right now. You've been warned. But we find out that the sources, I should say, of Ichigo's power are kind of splintered in a way. They all have to do with his ancestry and things that have happened to his parents and who his parents were. I can speak, I promise. We find out who he really is, and he himself is confronted with this. Throughout the story, as I previously said, he is consistently, I want to say haunted by his inner hollow. And at various times, he rejects the inner hollow. But at the same time, by rejecting his inner hollow, he finds himself not able to use his grand power at its absolute max. People who can do the same thing. They have the same, I guess you could call it an affliction. This group is known as the Visards. And they also are Shinigami and or Soul Reapers who have inner hollows. And they have the agenda at first to try and recruit Ichigo because why not have somebody else? It's not an everyday thing, Shinigami having a hollow inside of them. But at first Ichigo obviously is like, yeah, no, what? Let the strangers get away from me. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to bang with y'all. But then eventually, when he sees that, it is possible to control the inner hollow, then he eventually decides to give it a shot and try and work with them. Yeah, that doesn't work out too well at first. I mean, really, like it really didn't work. Eventually, Ichigo is able to work with them, and he is put in a position to confront his inner hollow. The inner hollow confrontation leads to one of the major speeches given in the series, probably one of the most influential anime speeches of all time, the infamous King and His Horse speech. The reference to the king and the horse made by Hollow Ichigo, the obviously inner hollow of Ichigo, is trying to get him to understand, like, yo, look, listen, don't don't be out here thinking that you're just gonna run in all half-assed into these situations. We are one and the same. If you are out here not embracing who you really are, I'll do it for you. And oh boy, does he ever. Ichigo has struggled many a time to get rid of this inner hollow. He thinks that this is, some part of him that should not be. He thinks that it's some part of him that is detestable, disgusting even. Ew, why are you here? Kind of sounds like the shadow side now, doesn't it? Carl Jung and a few others involved in analytical psychology have often talked about the suppression of our shadow side, which is pretty much the parts of ourselves that we don't necessarily agree with, like we don't really think should be here. Ew, why are you here? It's pretty much how Ichigo was treating himself. Albeit he didn't know it was himself. We find out much, much later on that the inner guide that Ichigo had, who he believed to be his true source of power, actually comes and tells him that, yeah, about that. Come to find out that it's actually the inner hollow that's Ichigo's true power. And so herein lies how Ichigo pertains to Pluto in the 12th house. As I stated before, Pluto is, in essence, our personal power. It is the thing that lets us know just how brolic we really are. But at the same time, it's, in whatever way, shape, or form that it manifests within anybody's natal chart, it's power that has been taken away from us and that we get back. Ichigo is out here faking the funk, trying to get rid of or suppress his inner hollow, only to find out that that's actually the true source of his power, or at least one of, because there's like a whole bunch of other things. It's confusing. But all in all, when he comes to finally understand how that hollow got within him, how who he thought was his main man inside, the person faking the funk, trying to pretend to be his real power, named Zangetsu. We find out that there was during that inner battle when Ichigo went to train with the Visards. We find out it was like a little bit of a foreshadowing that the inner hollow really was who he said he was. He said that he's actually Zangetsu. Zangetsu is the name of the inner power of Ichigo Kurosaki. With that being said, Pluto in the 12th house, we can sometimes, like anything that's in the 12th house, really, we don't really feel its presence. It's not readily available. I mean, the 12th house is kind of another dimension, you know what I'm saying? The spirit world, very intangible. And with Pluto in the 12th house, you know what I'm saying? Like, our power was taken away from us. Our spiritual processing power was taken away from us. And it can be it depends on, like, like aspects matter, people. But it's pretty much saying that as much as we want to get rid of the parts of us that either we ourselves or other people make us feel aren't necessarily worthy of being around, the more we do that, the more damage we're actually doing to ourselves, the more of a disservice we're doing to ourselves, and the more suppressed our actual max power will be. Ichigo then comes to accept both the older man that was appearing in his spirit world, pretending to be Zangetsu, and the actual inner hollow that is Zangetsu, both as the sources of his power. And he no longer relies on them as individuals or anything like that. He says, they're both Zangetsu, and I'm not asking for your help anymore because you are me. Thank you for everything. And then he gets this whole fucking big ass like thing, those cool stuff, big swords and stuff, like blah. We then see him later on being able to use all of the different kinds of tips and tricks that we were previously taught were bad in the series. Kind of like dealing with the shadow side as parts of himself. And it seems more and more that he's more like whole and complete. This brings me to the culmination of why we're here today in this video. Pluto in the 12th house is your power, untapped and just waiting for you to just like dive deep. Pluto dives deep. It is the modern day ruler of Scorpio. Shout out to all my Scorpio placements out there. And that power is the power of purity in and of itself. It's the power to get to the core root of things, the raw nitty gritty, and understand what it really is. And so having Pluto in the 12th house is doing the same, getting to the core nitty gritty of, you can say, pretty much the collective unconscious of either yourself and or others, and being able to really take on what's going on. The hollow Ichigo, or the hollow within Ichigo, was consistently telling him, like, yo, you only think that, at first he's telling him, You think that you've mastered Zangetsu because you know how to call its name? That's how they do in Bleach. They turn on their powers by calling their names. And Ichigo's like, well, yeah. The Hollow is like, yeah, you're a dummy. You're a dummy. He's also, while doing this, showing him a whole bunch of tips and tricks of how to fling Zangetsu around, like the infamous deadly darts, where he swings his Zangetsu on the cloth by its hilt. And Ichigo himself even says, like, "Oh my god, I never thought to do that." So the entire time he's telling him and teaching him how to use this sword and it's this his inner power. I forgot to say in Bleach, there's a lot of swords. It's a lot of swords. And that whole time, he thinks he gets it. He thinks he understands until, again, he shows up when he is training with the Visards. And that's when the whole King the Horse thing comes into play. Consistently telling Ichigo, like, yo, look, I'm dead at the center of your, like, being. I am your being. I'm telling you, this whole thing where you pretend to not like, fighting and not like, getting it on with like other people and just like getting in there and just like beating their ass and all that stuff. Yeah, that's BS. You're lying to yourself. And so Ichigo like fights that. He fights that until he doesn't. And bit by bit, he starts to come around and be like, all right, you know what? Like, maybe I am like this. Maybe I do like this. I don't know though. I don't know. And that's still more or less like how the 12th house is. It's very hazy at times. But I'd say that the best way to really gain access to that power is to be able to transform through surrender. When Ichigo was able to finally surrender, fighting who he really was, then that is when the transformation happened. And he was each time too, because it happened at different stages. The first time he was able to gain access to Zangetsu's power and be able to fight a little bit, better. The next time that they fought, he was able to. The fight was way more intense, and he was able to gain access to the inner hollow mask that the Visards put on. I thought that if I did that, like the mask would come. It didn't come. Still not here. But anyway, he gains access to the mask and he gains access to even more levels of power, eventually culminating when he meets Hollow Ichigo the final time within his subconscious or his inner world. See where I'm going with this? And then he accepts him fully. He also accepts the old man as another part of his power. And once he accepting is also another a way to surrender. Don't fight this stuff. Like, this is who you are, how you are, go with it. And he was able to unlock grand levels of power. And so this is why I believe that our anime astrology character of the day for the placement Pluto in the 12th house is Kurosaki Ichigo. Or, in America, Ichigo Kurosaki. Now, don't forget to leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you want some of these amazing birth chart services, amazing astrological services, all of my information is in the section down below. So you, my friends, have a great, great day.